They spent ages studying a lost language. A human understood and read it like every day, writing. They had studied a dead language for ages, but the human who stepped into their ancient hall could read its patterns as casually as yesterday's news. Before this tale unfolds, imagine someone pausing the cosmic broadcast just long enough to drop a quick greeting in the comments, sharing where they're watching from. Because even across galaxies, support matters more than most beings realize. Hit that subscribe button and tap the bell icon so you never miss our latest uploads. The ancient hall of the Galactic Archives loomed above Dr. Nora Ellis like a monument carved from memory itself. Towering crystalline walls shimmered with light that seemed alive, reflecting soft blue pulses from endless information panels stretching far beyond the point where ordinary eyesight failed. Nora stood alone among towering alien scholars, clutching her credentials with steady hands that hid the anxious tremor building beneath her calm exterior. She wondered, not for the first time, whether accepting the invitation had been reckless or brilliant, or perhaps both at once. For over 2,000 years, the galaxy's finest historians had struggled to decipher fragments of the precursor civilization's artifacts. Their best minds, working across generations, had chipped away at the mysteries left behind by species that vanished 30 million years earlier. That forgotten civilization's technology still eclipsed the combined advancements of every modern species, rendering their disappearance even more haunting. Countless scholars had dedicated lifetimes to unraveling their dense symbolic systems, yet progress had arrived slowly, like dim stars emerging through thick cosmic fog. Now, perhaps out of desperation or perhaps out of token courtesy, the consortium had invited a human linguist into their vaulted realm. Nora felt the weight of that decision pressing on her shoulders. Chief Archivist Telzak approached on a gravitic platform that glided over the floor with serene precision. His elongated form shimmered with pale blue scales that shifted with subtle emotional hues. Even seated, he towered over her by several feet. 6 articulated limbs moved in graceful coordination as he manipulated an array of floating holographic controls with practiced ease. Dr. Ellis, your arrival is timely, Telzak announced, his voice layered with resonant harmonics. The Council will convene shortly to discuss the Archimedean Matrix. Your presence has been specifically requested. I appreciate the invitation, Nora replied, wishing her voice felt as steady as she made it sound. I studied the briefing materials thoroughly, but I still find myself wondering why the consortium suddenly turned to humans after centuries of independent research. Purple streaks rippled across Telzak's scales. Amusement, according to her xenobiology notes. After 2 millennia of study, he said, certain members suggested that a radically different perspective might yield progress. Some argued it was overdue. His neutral tone carried a faint undertone of skepticism, but Nora chose not to dwell on it. I'll contribute whatever I can. She followed him through the immense archive. Scholars from dozens of civilizations floated, slithered, or strode across the enormous chambers in focused silence. A few glanced at Nora with polite curiosity, others with a barely concealed contempt reserved for species considered too young to understand the deep history of the galaxy. Humans had discovered faster-than-light travel barely a century ago, a blink compared to civilizations like the Centauri with 50,000 years of exploration behind them, or the Insectoidary, who had traversed the stars long before many species had taken their first steps into organized civilization. They entered the council chamber, a vast sphere whose curved walls displayed holographic projections of precursor artifacts, tablets, spirals, lattices, mechanical enigmas etched with symbols so intricate they seemed alive. 12 senior archivists from the galaxy's oldest species formed a semicircle around a central platform where the Archimedean matrix hovered, a crystalline structure of interwoven transparent channels inscribed with millions of shifting symbols. The human has arrived, Telzak announced. Dr. Nora Ellis of Earth, specialist in extinct languages and symbolic cognition. An insectoidary archivist, named Ketsti, clicked her mandibles, a gesture Nora recognized as skepticism. Humans enjoy puzzles, yes? Perhaps this exercise will entertain you. Nora forced a professional smile. She approached the matrix, breath catching at the sight. Holograms didn't do it justice. The lattice pulsed with subtle inner light, its surface symbols shifting with quiet organic fluidity. The Archimedean matrix is believed to encode precursor knowledge, explained senior archivist Velm, a gaunt humanoid whose translucent skin faintly revealed inner bioluminescent strands. Centuries of analysis have yielded no stable syntactical framework. Our computational models propose hundreds of possible interpretations, yet none remain stable when tested across the corpus. Nora studied the symbols, her eyes tracing recurring forms. Something about the structure tugged at her memory, familiar yet alien. She circled it slowly. What progress have you confirmed? We've cataloged 3,000 distinct symbol clusters, Telzak replied. Roughly 600 relate to cosmology or physical constants. 400 appear to be mathematical operators. The remaining 2,000, his scales blinked with frustrated red. They defy categorization. Nora nodded, gaze anchored to the matrix. The patterns rose and fell in visual rhythm. It flows like music, she murmured. Telzak tilted his head. Music? These clusters rise and fall in cadence. And here, these motifs repeated across the lattice, they resemble refrains. The archivists exchanged doubtful glances. We considered auditory encoding centuries ago, Ketsti said. The hypothesis failed all tests. Not conventional harmonics, Nora agreed. Something more abstract. She stepped back. Could you display all artifacts with over 100 sequential symbols? Telzak hesitated, then gestured. The walls shifted to reveal hundreds of artifacts across worlds. Nora felt the same sharp familiarity. These symbols weren't random. They told stories. She could feel meaning pressing at the edges of her awareness. Dr. Ellis, Velm interrupted, we've applied every analytical method. Frequency mapping, contextual modeling, syntactical prediction. That's the issue, Nora said. You're treating this like a static code. But languages aren't equations. They're cultural, contextual, shaped by organic evolution. Ketsti's mandibles clicked in irritation. Humans rely excessively on intuition. The Navari have used pattern recognition algorithms for 15 centuries. Intuition would have surfaced by now. With respect, Nora replied, intuition only emerges when one isn't boxed into the same frameworks for millennia. Humans are approaching this with no inherited assumptions. She examined the symbols again. These remind me of ancient human logographic systems, Chinese ideograms, Egyptian determinatives. Not identical, of course, but structurally resonant. Telzak's scales shifted skeptically. Human writing systems are primitive compared to this. Less complex, yes, Nora agreed, but similar in principle. See this repeating element? It works like a determinative. These branching structures serve like radicals, organizing meaning. Her confidence grew as patterns became clearer. This matrix isn't linear. It's like a symphony, meant to be perceived from multiple dimensions simultaneously. A poetic metaphor, Velm said, unconvinced. Not metaphor, Nora insisted. Look, each cluster is a conceptual movement. The relationships form harmonic meaning, not linear syntax. She turned to Telzak. Do you have a system capable of modeling multidimensional semantic relationships? The quantum resonance chamber, Telzak said slowly, though was built for physics research. Perfect, Nora said. Take me there. After debate, the council agreed. They descended into restricted chambers where the resonance system lay. Upon activation, thousands of symbolic lights flooded the space, forming a shifting constellation. Nora stepped among them, directing new relationships. Slowly, the chaos resolved into coherent structure, pulsing with rhythm and meaning. It's a story, she said eventually. The Matrix recounts precursor history, how they reached their zenith, encountered a cosmic entity beyond space-time, and how everything changed. The archivist stared in stunned silence. Even Ketzdy's mandibles stilled. Hours passed as Nora conducted the resonant patterns like an orchestra. Symbol by symbol, dimension by dimension, meaning emerged. Telzak's scales flared blue-green with awe. Dr. Ellis, this changes everything. Nora breathed deeply, heart pounding with exhilaration and relief. This is only the beginning. Vel moved closer to the glowing constellation, his translucent skin flickering with astonished light patterns. In 15 centuries, he whispered, we never once considered that the structure itself conveyed experiential meaning. We looked for static translation keys, not shifting relational harmonics. Because you were searching for linear order, Nora said gently. But this language was built around recursive meaning. Loops within loops, perspectives within perspectives. Every cluster interacts with others across multiple dimensions. Meaning isn't fixed, it's emergent. The resonance chamber shimmered as the symbols rearranged themselves. Nora approached a spiraling pattern at the center. This is the core of their narrative. They describe their civilization not just through facts, but through experiential resonance. These symbols carry conceptual meaning, emotional tone, and cognitive rhythm simultaneously. Telzak's scales shifted to deep violet, intellectual fascination. You are suggesting the precursors saw no distinction between data and experience. Exactly. Their knowledge structures unified both. They didn't separate science from art, logic from emotion, or meaning from measurement. Their language reflects an integrated worldview. Ketzdy studied a rotating cluster. If this narrative is accurate, the precursors uncovered a realm outside conventional space-time. Is this depiction literal or mythic? I can't say yet, Nora admitted. But the narrative structure suggests they believed it to be literal. They encountered something beyond dimensional constraints, something that altered their understanding of existence. The chamber pulsed, as though agreeing. Nora guided the symbols into a stabilized formation. Look here. This sequence shows how they perceive the encounter, not as a threat, but as an expansion of consciousness. A transformation. Velm hesitated. Transformation into what? Nora exhaled. Into something no longer bound by matter or temporal flow. Their story suggests they transcended physical form. The archivists exchanged uneasy glances. The idea rattled assumptions older than most civilizations represented in that chamber. Ketzdy's mandibles clicked softly, not with irritation now, but with contemplation. If true, it implies their disappearance was not extinction. It was evolution. Evolution of a sort, Nora replied. But not biological. Cognitive. Existential, Telzak murmured. This discovery could alter our understanding of intelligence itself. And that's why we must proceed carefully, Nora said. We're dealing with a civilization whose final chapter may still be unfolding somewhere beyond our perception. She turned toward Telzak. We must confirm these findings with additional artifacts. The Matrix is extraordinary, but still just one piece of a larger archive. Telzak nodded slowly. The Council will resist untested interpretations, but they cannot ignore this. He gestured around the chamber. You have revealed meaning where we saw only chaos. Nora stepped away from the glowing symbols. The chamber dimmed slightly, responding to her shift in focus. This isn't about proving human intellect. It's about understanding a language built around perspectives we've never considered. And yet humans saw it first, Velm noted, thoughtful. Perhaps your species' cognitive tendencies allowed you to perceive these patterns. We evolved to make intuitive leaps, Nora said. Our neurological limits forced creativity, improvisation. We connect disparate elements quickly because we had to. Ketzdy tilted her head. An evolutionary advantage born of constraint. Exactly. The symbols pulsed again, like a heartbeat echoing through the chamber. This is only the first layer, Nora said quietly. The Matrix holds deeper structures. Their story expands across dimensions we haven't modeled yet, and they left more artifacts that likely build on this narrative. Telzak's scales shimmered gold, deep respect. Then we must continue. The Council will grant additional access, I am certain. You have opened a doorway we never knew existed. Nora looked up at the swirling constellation of ancient symbols. The precursors have waited 30 million years for someone to hear their story. I think they're ready for us to continue. As the chamber dimmed to a quiet glow, Nora sensed something subtle, a vibration in the air, almost musical, as if the symbols were awakening after ages of silence. She wondered whether the precursors had anticipated this, designing their language to resonate across millennia until a mind emerged capable of hearing its harmony. The archivists watched her, no longer skeptical, but captivated. In that instant, Nora felt the beginning of something larger than translation, an unfolding conversation waiting patiently to resume. The resonance lingered, inviting deeper exploration and hinting that the story was only just beginning for all who witnessed it. 3 days later, the entire Galactic Archives buzzed with an energy Nora had never felt before. Word of her breakthrough swept through the halls like a tidal wave of renewed purpose. Scholars of every species filled the observation decks, the research chambers, and the connecting corridors, eager to witness what many were already calling the most significant advancement in precursor studies in thousands of years. Nora found herself overwhelmed by requests for explanations, demonstrations, and interviews, though she tried her best to maintain focus on the unfolding discoveries. Even those who had regarded humanity with indifference or suspicion now watched her with a mixture of curiosity and restrained hope. By the time she stood before the full consortium council, the atmosphere had shifted dramatically. Instead of seeing her as an inexperienced newcomer, they now regarded her as the one being who had managed to see past centuries of dead ends. Representatives from over 200 species filled the Grand Assembly Hall, an immense chamber where layered rows rose upward in concentric rings, each shimmering with hovering presences, floating organisms, or towering physical forms. The air itself vibrated with anticipation, as though the entire galaxy leaned in to hear what might come next. Council Chairperson Morvac, the ancient Zenturi whose silvered scales carried the weight of uncountable years, addressed her with measured reverence. "Dr. Ellis," he said, "your discovery has stirred intense discussion throughout our community. Skepticism remains among some of our number, yet none deny the originality and magnitude of your insights." Nora bowed her head slightly. "Thank you, Chairperson. I stand here because thousands of scholars before me established the groundwork. Without them, none of this would have been possible." That diplomatic gesture softened several doubtful expressions. With a gesture of her hand, Nora activated the holographic display. The hall dimmed as a miniature projection of the Archimedean matrix blossomed into the air, shimmering with layered meaning. The assembled scholars murmured as the symbols shifted, harmonizing into a coherent structure that appeared alive with resonant intention. "What you are seeing," Nora explained, "is not a translation in the conventional sense. It is a representation of how the precursors intended their knowledge to be perceived. Their language isn't a linear sequence of discrete units. It functions as a multidimensional framework, integrating conceptual, emotional, and relational information simultaneously." She guided them through her interpretation, describing how precursor symbols functioned like musical motifs, mathematical operators, sensory triggers, cultural references, and cognitive signposts all at once. She emphasized the recursive structures, the repeating harmonic relationships, and the layered levels of meaning that intertwined to form a complex experiential system. The council listened, captivated, as she described how the Matrix was not merely a static record, but an immersive knowledge artifact. Eventually, she reached the part that had startled even her during the initial decoding. "The Archimedean Matrix," she said, "is a historical record of the precursors' encounter with what they call the transcendent realm. This realm intersects with our universe, but operates on principles entirely different from those we understand." A crystalline being resonated with surprise. "Are you suggesting the precursors traveled beyond physical reality?" "I'm saying," Nora clarified carefully, that the Matrix presents this as historical fact. Whether it is literal or metaphorical remains to be seen, but the narrative is consistent across multiple structures. A wave of concerned murmurs washed across the assembly. "Then they're not extinct?" asked another delegate, a cluster of gaseous spheres that pulsed in rhythm. "They may still exist." According to the Matrix, Nora said, they transitioned out of physical existence altogether. Whether that means they still exist in another state or simply reached an unknown endpoint, we cannot yet determine. Skepticism flickered through the room, particularly from Ketsti and several other Elder Archivists. "Extraordinary claims demand extraordinary evidence," Ketsti rasped. "One artifact cannot overturn centuries of rigorous analysis." "I agree completely," Nora replied. "That's why I propose applying this method to other major precursor artifacts. The Helix Codex from Andromeda, the temporal inscriptions from Proximus Centauri 7. Each contains complex symbolic structures that have resisted all known approaches." Telzak's scales shifted to bright interest. "The Helix Codex has confounded scholars for 15 centuries. Do you believe your methodology could unlock it?" "I can't guarantee it," Nora said honestly. "But the symbolic architecture appears compatible with the same multidimensional framework. The Matrix and the Codex feel like two parts of a larger story." A ripple of thoughtful consideration passed through the chamber. Even those who had doubted her intentions seemed moved by the calm clarity of her proposal. Morvac studied Nora closely, then nodded. "The Council will review your request. But I, for one, find your reasoning compelling." When the session ended, Nora barely had time to breathe before scholars surged toward her, asking questions about harmonic analysis, cognitive frameworks, fractal interpretation, and symbolic recursion. She answered what she could, though each explanation sparked more fascination. Hours later, she finally reached her assigned quarters and let the door slide shut behind her. Only then did she exhale deeply, realizing how tightly she had held herself the entire day. Before she could collapse in a much-needed rest, a chime sounded, an incoming communication request. She activated the display, and Telzak's elegant form appeared, scales reflecting soft blue luminescence. "Dr. Ellis," he said, "my apologies for disturbing you. The Council has reached a preliminary ruling." Nora straightened. "Already? What did they decide?" "You are granted access to the Helix Codex and other principal precursor artifacts for a trial period of 1 standard galactic year." His scales flashed a blend of blue and amber. A Centauri expression she had learned indicated cautious optimism. "During this time, you will collaborate with senior archivists to assess the validity and scalability of your method." "That's incredible," Nora breathed. "Thank you for supporting the proposal." "I only presented the facts," Telzak replied, though the harmonic undertones of his voice betrayed a hint of satisfaction. "Your results were persuasive on their own, but I must warn you, some still doubt your conclusions. They agreed to this trial not out of full acceptance, but to test whether your insights hold under broader scrutiny." "That's fair," Nora said. "Skepticism is part of science." Telzak's scales shifted into a more personal shade. "There is something else. I have studied human history extensively. One trait stands out even across your short existence as a starfaring species: your tendency to take bold leaps where others hesitate." Nora smiled wryly. "We've never been particularly patient." "Patience is overrated," Telzak replied with surprising warmth. "Your boldness may be precisely what our scholarship required. Many elder species have grown so methodical that they overlook the value of intuitive leaps." "That's a generous interpretation," Nora said lightly. "Some would call it recklessness." "Recklessness is acting without purpose. You acted with insight." His scales shimmered with the deep gold Nora had seen only once before, a Centauri symbol of profound respect. In the following weeks, Nora worked tirelessly alongside an expanding research team. The Helix Codex proved as challenging as expected. A spiral-shaped artifact covered in dense symbols, it had baffled scholars for over 1,500 years despite countless attempts to decode it. But once Nora applied the multidimensional framework, the codex began revealing harmonics similar to those in the Matrix. "It's like a companion piece," Nora explained to Telzak as they observed the emerging pattern in the resonance chamber. While the Matrix records the precursor's journey into the transcendent realm, the codex explains the mechanics of it, how that realm interfaces with our universe, and how consciousness transitions between states. Telzak's scales pulsed bright blue. If this interpretation is correct, we are facing a radical new understanding of consciousness itself. Exactly, Nora said. The codex suggests consciousness isn't generated by biological systems. Instead, the brain channels it, like an antenna receiving a universal signal. The precursors didn't simply access the transcendent realm. They recognized consciousness as a natural bridge between dimensions. Telzak contemplated this silently. "Your findings blur the boundary between science and philosophy." "That's because the precursors didn't divide them," Nora replied. "Meaning and measurement, intuition and data, they regarded them as parts of a single integrated perspective." News of these discoveries ignited the galaxy. Some species reacted with awe, others with fear, and still others with philosophical enthusiasm. Religious groups debated whether the transcendent realm corresponded to their sacred beliefs. Scientists argued passionately about whether consciousness's signal could be tested. Politicians discussed the implications of contacting a possibly still existing precursor civilization. Nora found herself thrust into an unexpected level of fame. Media networks from dozens of species asked for interviews. Universities begged her to lecture. Publishers from several planets offered staggering contracts for a popular book. While she appreciated the interest, she declined most invitations, insisting the priority was completing the research. One afternoon, as she collaborated with Ketsti on analyzing temporal inscriptions from Proximus Centauri 7, the once skeptical archivist clicked her mandible softly. "You have become something of an interstellar sensation," she observed. "Even the Navari communication networks speak of a human linguist who solved the precursor puzzle." "It's exaggerated," Nora said, adjusting the harmonic model. "Stories tend to grow as they travel." "Perhaps," Ketsti replied, "yet the core remains. You perceived what countless species overlooked. Not because humans are superior, but because your cognitive constraints encourage intuitive leaps." Nora smiled. "A polite way of saying our brains compensate for what we lack. That compensation may be precisely what allowed you to succeed." 6 months into the project, they achieved another breakthrough. The temporal inscriptions from Proximus Centauri 7 revealed precursor mastery of gravity, space-time manipulation, and energy generation far beyond anything modern species possessed. Velm studied a translated segment with astonishment. If this is accurate, they developed energy systems that make antimatter reactors seem primitive. They shaped space-time itself, remarked Zaf, the gas phase researcher. Not just counteracting gravity, reshaping it. "These technologies could change galactic civilization," Telzak murmured. "But we must proceed with caution." "I agree," Nora said. "The objective isn't to replicate their technology blindly. It's to understand their perspective, how they unified fields we treat as separate." As the 1-year mark approached, Nora worked late into many nights, perfecting the framework that would be presented to the council. Telzak found her in the resonance chamber one night, surrounded by shifting patterns of light. "You should rest," he advised gently. "Even humans need sleep." "I know," she admitted. "But the council will examine every detail. I want them to experience this the way the precursors intended." "You've already achieved more than anyone thought possible," Telzak said. "Even the skeptics now acknowledge your insight." "It's not about proving anything," Nora said quietly. "It's about honoring what the precursors left behind." Telzak's scales glowed gold again. "You have taught us to see differently." When the final day arrived, Nora stood again before the immense council hall, bounded by thousands of observers representing hundreds of civilizations. The air hummed with anticipation. Morvac addressed the assembly with solemn gravity. "Dr. Nora Ellis," he said, 1 year ago, you proposed a radical departure from millennia of established methodology. Many doubted you. Today, after extensive review, this council unanimously recognizes your work as the most significant advancement in precursor studies since our founding. A thunderous wave of diverse applause filled the chamber. Your framework will be adopted across the consortium, Morvac continued, and you are offered the role of principal researcher in the newly formed division of integrative xenolinguistics. Emotion surged through Nora as she accepted the position. She spoke of unity, perspective, and the importance of integrating diverse ways of knowing. She emphasized that the precursor's greatest message was not technological, but philosophical, that understanding emerges when perspectives intertwine. When she finished, the chamber erupted into applause once more. And the real journey, she sensed, had only just begun. In the months following her appointment as principal researcher, Nora's work transformed not only the Galactic Archives, but the wider scholarly landscape across hundreds of civilizations. Her new division, Integrative Xenolinguistics, became a hub of collaboration where diverse researchers blended their species' cognitive strengths to decode ancient mysteries that had resisted clarity for thousands of years. The hallways, once echoing with quiet skepticism, now vibrated with the excitement of renewed discovery, and scholars who previously dismissed human insight now actively sought Nora's guidance. Nora had not expected fame, nor did she particularly crave it, but she could not ignore the growing attention. Everywhere she went within the archives, beings paused to acknowledge her, offering respectful gestures or greetings in their native expressions. She accepted their enthusiasm graciously, though she always redirected conversations toward the work itself. The legacy of the precursors mattered more than any status she gained from interpreting it. One evening, as she gazed at the swirling projections of the precursor symbols hovering across a vast research chamber, she felt the weight of a decade's worth of revelations. 10 years had passed since she first stepped into the Galactic Archives as an uncertain outsider. Now she stood at the center of a revolution in understanding, with scholars from across the galaxy aligning their work with her methods. It was a position she had never imagined occupying, yet one she had grown into with a mixture of humility and determination. Telzak approached from behind, his presence signaled by the gentle hum of his gravitic platform. His once vibrant scales had softened with age, though their shifting colors still conveyed his emotions clearly. "The Council has approved the next major phase," he said, sounding both excited and apprehensive. "The Transcendence Initiative will move forward." Nora turned to face him. "So soon?" "The translations from the serious artifacts were decisive," Telzak responded. "Your team's work revealed protocols that appear explicitly designed to facilitate communication with the transcendent realm. The Council believes the time has come to attempt contact." Nora studied the symbols hovering before her, feeling a mixture of awe and caution. "Are we prepared for something like this?" she asked softly. "Contacting a civilization that transcended 30 million years ago. We can't predict what it might mean." "That is precisely why you were asked to lead the initiative," Telzak said. "Your ability to interpret both technical and experiential meaning makes you uniquely equipped." Nora absorbed this with a slow, steady breath. The stars displayed on the chamber wall reminded her of the vastness of all she still didn't know. "I'll do my best," she said finally. "You always do," Telzak replied, his scales glimmering with deep gold, the Zenturi's highest expression of respect. "The galaxy believes you can guide us through this." In the months that followed, Nora coordinated teams from over 100 species. Each group specialized in a unique facet of the precursor data: harmonic linguistics, cognitive resonance, temporal anchoring, quantum field modulation, experiential mapping, and dozens more. Nora found herself navigating an intricate balance between science and philosophy, between logistical planning and collaborative creativity. For the Transcendence Initiative to succeed, they needed to construct a communication framework compatible with a civilization that might no longer exist in any physical sense. The first step involved mapping precursor signals from multiple artifacts into a single unified pattern. The artifacts recovered across the galaxy exhibited recurring harmonic structures, like echoes of a larger narrative spread across time and space. Nora and her teams synthesized these patterns into a coherent multidimensional lattice. They projected the lattice within the quantum resonance chamber, allowing it to evolve dynamically. The resulting structure pulsed with a rhythm that felt both familiar and alien, like a message suspended in cosmic silence awaiting interpretation. During one session, Ketsti watched the swirling harmonics with sharpened attention. "The structure is stabilizing," she observed. "The resonance is aligning across multiple dimensional axes." "Exactly what we hoped for," Nora said. "If the precursors integrated meaning across dimensional states, then this resonance pattern might reflect their perspective." Ketsti clicked her mandibles thoughtfully. "Do you believe they intended for another civilization to find this?" "I think so," Nora said. "Nothing about their language was accidental. Every symbol, every resonance carried intentional meaning. I suspect they believe someone, someday, will be able to follow their path." Telzak arrived moments later, examining the stable harmonics. "This formation resembles the primary interface symbol you identified in the Sirius protocols." "Yes," Nora said, pointing toward a spiraling cluster. "This represents convergence, connection between states of being. It's symmetrical in physical space, but asymmetrical in harmonic dimensions. That suggests it's meant to bridge two realms." "A gateway," Telzak murmured. "Or a conversation," Nora corrected gently. "A gateway implies travel. The precursors might not have needed travel at all. They may have shifted consciousness through resonance alignment." Ketsti studied the pattern further. "If that's true, then communication may be possible without physical contact." "Exactly," Nora said. "That's the heart of the initiative." Over time, they refined the resonance pattern. They balanced harmonic frequencies, aligned dimensional vectors, and mapped experiential signatures. The work demanded extreme precision and creative intuition. Many days, Nora worked until exhaustion blurred her thoughts, only to wake hours later with a new insight that reshaped their entire approach. It felt as though the precursor's language had awakened something dormant inside her, a deeper layer of perception that had always been waiting to surface. Yet with each breakthrough, Nora also felt the growing weight of responsibility. Every decision she made could influence how the galaxy interacted with whatever remained of the precursor civilization. Many species feared the consequences of contacting beings who had transcended material existence. Others worried about destabilizing galactic politics if new knowledge gave certain civilizations an advantage. Still others believed the precursor's departure represented a cosmic threshold that younger species were not ready to cross. Nora addressed these concerns in multiple council meetings, emphasizing caution, collaboration, and the need for unified oversight. She argued that no single species should control the initiative. Eventually, a consensus formed. The project would operate under direct council supervision, with Nora as its coordinator but not its sole authority. This arrangement reassured most of the skeptics and ensured the galaxy remained invested in the outcome. Throughout this period, Nora found unexpected comfort in the friendships she had developed. Telzak became not only a mentor and colleague, but a trusted confidant who offered grounding perspective when the work threatened to overwhelm her. Ketsti, once her vocal critic, grew into a valued partner who challenged her assumptions and strengthened her reasoning. Zaf contributed unique insights drawn from gaseous cognition, which excelled at perceiving fluid states of meaning. Velm continued to analyze structural correlations with methodical precision, providing essential stability to their theoretical framework. One evening, after a long day of cross-dimensional mapping, Nora sat alone in the resonance chamber. The lights dimmed around her, leaving only the harmonic lattice floating in the air. The pattern pulsed softly, like a breathing organism. She realized how profoundly the precursor's language had influenced her inner world. It had taught her to see meaning not as static truth, but as an evolving interaction between perspective and reality. She wondered what it must have felt like for the precursors when they first approached the threshold of transcendence. Was it terrifying? Liberating? Did they anticipate leaving behind a legacy that younger species would struggle to interpret millions of years later? As she pondered these questions, the harmonics shifted subtly, as though responding to her thoughts. A slow, spiraling resonance emerged from the center of the lattice, forming a pattern she had not programmed. For a moment, she questioned whether fatigue had clouded her perception, but the shift persisted, precise and deliberate. She summoned Telzak immediately. "Come to the resonance chamber." Now, when Telzak arrived, she replayed the shift. His scales blazed with a spectrum of colors no Zenturi had displayed in her presence before, a sign of stunned amazement. "This pattern, it was not part of your original configuration." "No," Nora said. "I didn't generate it. Could it be a harmonic echo?" Telzak asked. "A stabilizing fluctuation?" She shook her head. "Harmonics stabilize, but they don't create new structures. This change indicates intentional input." "From where?" "I don't know." Ketsti arrived next, drawn by the urgency in Telzak's message. She examined the new pattern and clicked her mandibles in alarm. This resonance corresponds to the primary precursor identity signature. But it's inverted, like a response. "A response," Nora repeated softly. The word felt both impossible and inevitable. Telzak lowered his gaze toward her. "Dr. Ellis, are you suggesting what I think you are?" Nora stared at the lattice, her heartbeat quickening. "I think the precursors heard us." The chamber fell silent, the only sound the faint hum of the resonance field. Nora felt a thrill of wonder mixed with a surge of fear. If the precursors had indeed reacted to their pattern, then communication across dimensions might truly be possible. Over the next several days, they ran every diagnostic imaginable. They analyzed energy fluctuations, dimensional drift, harmonic interference, and quantum echoes. Every test ruled out mechanical error or random fluctuation. The pattern had emerged with deliberate coherence, structured, intentional, unmistakably intelligent. The council convened an emergency meeting. Representatives packed the chamber, their voices rising in anxious speculation. Nora presented her analysis, supporting it with harmonic diagrams and real-time resonance models. When she finished, the hall vibrated with reactions: astonishment, disbelief, hope, fear. Morvac, his silver scales shimmering with tension, addressed the assembly. "If this resonance is indeed a response, we stand at the threshold of contact with a civilization beyond physical form. Dr. Ellis, are we prepared?" Nora felt the immense responsibility settle onto her shoulders. "We don't know what form this communication will take. We don't know if the precursors can perceive us fully or whether they recognize our intentions. But we know this: they left a path encoded in their artifacts, and we followed it." Telzak stepped forward. "The initiative must continue, but carefully, with unity and transparency." The council debated for hours. Eventually, they voted unanimously to authorize the next stage. Nora's team would attempt a controlled exchange using the harmonic lattice as a communication bridge. It would be the first deliberate attempt to speak across dimensions using precursor methodology. The galaxy held its breath. As preparations began, Nora stood once more before the swirling lattice, watching the resonance pulse gently. She felt a strange connection blossom, something profound and wordless, as though the lattice sensed her presence. "We're ready to listen," she whispered. And somewhere beyond space and time, something seemed to listen back. The days leading up to the first attempted communication felt unreal, as though Nora moved through a dream layered atop the waking world. The entire Galactic Archives pulsed with an energy that made every corridor feel charged with meaning. Scholars worked in shifts around the clock, their attention fixed on harmonic screens and multidimensional interfaces. Delegates from hundreds of species arrived to witness what many believed could be the most important event in the galaxy's recorded history. Even those who doubted the possibility of contact found themselves unable to resist the gravity of the moment. Nora did her best to maintain calm, but inside she felt a constant hum of anticipation and fear. She understood better than anyone the magnitude of what they were attempting. They were not sending a message into deep space, nor transmitting across temporal layers. They were reaching through the fabric of reality itself, calling out to beings who might perceive time, matter, and consciousness in ways utterly foreign to dimensional existence. The possibility of misunderstanding, of misalignment, haunted her thoughts. But the possibility of success filled her with a sense of awe so vast it was difficult to contain. Telzak remained close throughout the preparations. His presence steadied her, his calm gravitic movements a reminder of how far they had come together since her uncertain arrival a decade earlier. One evening, as the two of them reviewed the harmonic framework in the resonance chamber, Telzak's scales shifted into soft shades of contemplative violet. "You are quiet tonight," he observed. "I'm thinking about the risks," Nora admitted. "We don't know what will happen when we initiate the resonance. We could trigger nothing or everything. You have prepared for every known variable," Telzak said, "and for many unknown ones. But there is no path forward without uncertainty." "I know," Nora said. "It's just the precursors reached a state we barely understand. We can map their symbols and harmonics, but comprehension isn't the same as shared experience." Telzak considered this. Perhaps contact does not require full understanding. Perhaps it requires only openness. Nora smiled faintly. A very philosophical Zenturi answer. "And a very human concern," Telzak replied. They worked in silence for a while longer. When the chamber dimmed into night mode, Nora finally left the facility, exhaustion weighing on her steps. Yet even as she settled into her quarters, she could not sleep. Her mind replayed the moment she first recognized the story encoded within the Archimedean matrix, the moment she realized the precursors had been speaking all along. She thought of the new harmonic pattern that responded to them, the one that should not have existed. Something in that moment had awakened a sense of destiny inside her, a belief that their efforts were not random chance, but part of a larger unfolding. When dawn arrived, she returned to the chamber before anyone else. The resonance lattice floated silently, its spiral core pulsing in slow, rhythmic intervals. She approached it as though approaching an ancient being in quiet meditation. For a reason she could not articulate, she placed her hand near the lattice, never touching it, but close enough that she felt a faint vibration ripple across her skin. "We're going to try," she whispered. The lattice pulsed once in response, almost imperceptibly. That same day, the final preparations were completed. The harmonic sequence translated from precursor artifacts had been refined into a communication pattern, a kind of greeting in multidimensional form. The message threaded together conceptual meaning, emotional resonance, and relational structure. It expressed curiosity, peaceful intent, and the desire for connection. Creating it required input from dozens of species, each contributing what their cognition processed best. Even then, Nora sensed how limited their representation was compared to the richness of precursor communication, but it was the closest approximation current beings could create. The council ordered a full assembly. Representatives filled the observation tiers, murmuring in languages that dissolved into a swirling tapestry of sound. News networks broadcast the event across the galaxy, reaching worlds Nora had never visited. Billions, maybe trillions, of beings watched as the initiative prepared to activate. Nora addressed the assembly briefly, explaining the intention behind the message and the safeguards in place. "We do this with humility," she said, "knowing that we reach not as equals, but as explorers seeking understanding. Whatever response we receive, if any, will deepen our awareness of the universe and of the path the precursors walked." Morvac offered final words of support, his ancient voice carrying through the chamber with solemn reverence. Then he signaled to Nora. It was time. Nora stood at the control platform of the resonance chamber. Telzak, join her on her right. Ketsti stood to her left, mandibles drawn tight with anticipation. Zaf hovered behind them, body rippling in translucent waves. Vel monitored the structural integrity of the harmonic field from another station. Dozens of other researchers positioned themselves at auxiliary interfaces. The chamber filled with soft harmonic vibration as power flowed into the resonance lattice. Initializing dimensional alignment, Velm announced. Primary harmonic channels stabilizing, Ketsti added. Quantum anchor engaged, Zaf confirmed. Nora lifted her hand. Begin the transmission. The lattice brightened. The chamber walls faded into a field of darkness as the multidimensional interface activated. The first harmonic sequence spiraled outward, forming intricate layers of meaning. The symbols shifted into a flowing luminous dance, ascending and descending through harmonic space. It felt like watching an orchestra composed of stars, time, and thought all performing in perfect synchrony. As the message unfolded, Nora felt an unexpected emotional weight settle over her. The harmonic sequence mirrored the precursor's integrative worldview, meaning fused with experience, knowledge fused with emotion. She sensed hope woven into the structure, curiosity embedded in the resonance, and a shimmering undercurrent of humility. They were reaching into the unknown, offering not certainty, but presence. Then the message ended, leaving the chamber suspended in a quiet that felt impossibly deep. For a moment, no one moved. The harmonic field remained bright, steady, waiting. And then, the response began. At first, it appeared as a faint tremor within the lattice, subtle enough that Nora wondered if she had imagined it. But then the tremor expanded, resolving into a shimmering pattern unlike anything they had generated. It was vast, elegant, deliberate, and it altered the lattice with authority, as though acknowledging their message and overlaying its own. Gasps filled the chamber. Ketsti froze mid-motion. Zaf's body rippled violently in shock. Telzak's scales erupted into a burst of gold so bright they glowed like living fire. Nora stared, breath caught in her throat. The pattern communicated not through symbols, but through relational harmonics that cascaded through multiple dimensions at once. It suggested recognition, awareness, not merely hearing, but listening. A bidirectional exchange had begun. Velm's voice shook. This is mathematically impossible. No, Nora whispered, eyes wide. It's intentional. The lattice continued to shift, patterns weaving into paths of meaning Nora sensed, but could not fully interpret. Some clusters radiated emotional resonance, immense, serene, ancient. Others conveyed cognitive structures far beyond their models. And one spiraling sequence extended outward like an invitation. Is it focalizing on us? Zaf murmured. Yes, Nora said. It's focusing on the harmonic pattern we generated. It sees us. Telzak trembled, an extremely rare Zenturi reaction. What does it want? I'm not sure, Nora replied. But I think it's trying to synchronize with our perception. It's adjusting itself to what we can understand. Ketsti clicked her mandibles. They're accommodating us? Or they're opening a pathway, Nora said. The pattern expanded again, forming a new harmonic shape. Nora felt her heart jolt. She recognized fragments, shapes echoing portions of the Archimedean matrix and the Helix Codex and the temporal inscriptions. But now they were integrated into something larger, something that implied a continuity she had suspected for years but never confirmed. This is their unifying framework, Nora said aloud. Everything they left behind, the artifacts, the inscriptions, they all pointed to this. This is their full dimensional interface. Are we meant to respond? Telzak asked cautiously. Yes, Nora breathed, but carefully. For several minutes, the chamber existed in a state of suspended tension. The lattice continued its unfolding dance. The pattern felt alive, brimming with meaning. Nora had never experienced anything like it. She felt as though her thoughts were being gently brushed. Not probed, not altered, acknowledged. She activated the reply interface. We will answer, she said softly. Her team looked at her with a mixture of fear and trust. She initiated a small harmonic sequence, simple, respectful, constructed with the utmost care. It expressed acknowledgement, gratitude, and willingness to continue dialogue. The response came almost immediately. The lattice brightened. The pattern enfolded her sequence, expanded it, and reflected it back with such breathtaking complexity that several observers gasped. Nora felt her knees weaken. The communication wasn't just mutual, it was interactive, adaptive. "They're teaching us," she whispered. "They're shaping our understanding in real time." Ketsti's mandibles parted in astonishment. "They perceive us as capable of learning? Or worthy of trying," Nora said. More patterns emerged, slower now, gentler, as though the precursors were gauging the limits of physical cognition. Nora sensed no hostility, no danger, only an overwhelming sense of patience and something that felt like joy. The lattice pulsed with resonance that made her eyes sting unexpectedly, a feeling she could only describe as recognition across the vast gulf of time. Then, gradually, the pattern began to withdraw, not severing contact, but receding into harmonic quiet, as though signaling a pause rather than an ending. "They're giving us time to process," Nora realized. The chamber dimmed. The resonance stabilized. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Telzak turned to Nora, voice trembling. "We made contact." Nora exhaled shakily. "Yes." And they answered. The council chamber erupted into a wave of stunned voices, but Nora barely heard them. She felt something shifting inside her, something profound and irreversible. The universe had opened wider than she ever imagined. The precursors were not gone. They were waiting. They had been waiting all along. And now, after 30 million years, the conversation had finally begun. Galactic history recorded many great turning points. Eras when civilizations discovered fire, mastered spaceflight, harnessed quantum fields, or unlocked new layers of consciousness. But none compared to the moment Dr. Nora Ellis and her team made contact with the precursors. News of the event spread across thousands of worlds within hours. From sprawling planetary capitals to isolated mining colonies, from aquatic metropolises in methane oceans to crystalline habitats in the void, beings of every kind felt their understanding of existence expand. For the first time, the galaxy glimpsed the possibility that transcendence was not myth, but memory, a path walked by the oldest known civilization. The response from the precursors was replayed endlessly. The harmonic lattice shifting with impossible elegance, the dimensional resonances forming patterns far beyond physical comprehension. Scholars attempted to decode every nuance. Philosophers debated the meaning of transcendence. Religious leaders contemplated how these revelations aligned with sacred texts. Political councils feared what new knowledge might mean for balance of power. And throughout it all, Nora found herself at the center of the storm. Admired, questioned, celebrated, scrutinized. But even with the galaxy's attention fixed upon her, Nora remained grounded in the work. She understood that contact was only the beginning. The precursors had responded, but they had responded with restraint, providing only enough meaning to acknowledge the exchange. They offered no detailed instruction, no explicit guidance, no overwhelming revelation. They had extended a hand across dimensional divides and then waited. Nora believed that patience was intentional. For weeks following the initial contact, teams across the archives worked tirelessly to interpret the patterns. New research divisions formed overnight. Entire universities reorganized their linguistic, cognitive, and quantum departments around precursor challenges. Artificial intelligences were reconfigured to process harmonic relationships. Even species with little historic interest in scholarship contributed insights, each offering a unique cognitive perspective shaped by their evolutionary paths. Yet despite the collective effort, progress came slowly. The patterns the precursors used were too layered, too fluid, too intertwined with experiential meaning. Their communication blended logic and emotion, knowledge and metaphor, simplicity and infinity. It was like studying the reflections of a star in a rippling pool, ever shifting, never fully graspable. Nora approached each new discovery with humility. She guided her teams through breakthroughs and setbacks, reminding them that interpreting a civilization beyond dimensional form required new ways of thinking. She encouraged collaboration, not competition, integration, not hierarchy. Her division flourished under this philosophy, and gradually, the galaxy began to adopt it as well. One quiet morning, Nora stood on the observation deck of the archives, gazing at the radiant expanse of the galactic core. The swirling golden clouds of ancient stars seemed to stretch into eternity. She placed a hand against the glass, feeling the faint vibration of the station's energy fields. Her mind wandered back to the beginning, her arrival as an anxious human scholar, clutching credentials amid towering alien intellects. Back then, she had wondered if she belonged. Now she had become a symbol of unity, not because she possessed greater intellect, but because she saw meaning where others saw noise. Telzak approached her quietly. His aging scales still shimmered with subtle light, though now muted by time. Even so, they maintained the graceful patterns he had always expressed around her, colors of curiosity, respect, and an emotion she had come to recognize as deep camaraderie. "The council has reached a verdict," Telzak announced. Nora turned to him. "About the next phase?" Telzak nodded. "Yes, they have approved the full implementation of the Transcendence Initiative." A ripple of mixed emotions spread through her chest. Anticipation, pride, fear, and something else she couldn't name. "So they want us to proceed with establishing stable communication." "Yes," Telzak said. "Your work confirmed the purpose of the precursor artifacts. The ascension protocols, the dimensional anchors, the harmonic structures, all were designed to guide younger civilizations toward contact. The Council agrees that following this path honors the precursor's intent." Nora absorbed this with a deep breath. "How will the initiative be structured?" "You will lead it," Telzak said simply, "with representatives from all member species. This endeavor cannot belong to one world or one people. It must be shared." She appreciated the sentiment, though she felt the weight behind it. What exactly does the Council expect from this phase? "To deepen the communication," Telzak said. "To learn more about the precursor's existence in the transcendent realm. To understand whether transcendence is achievable by others. And to determine what role, if any, the precursors envision for the civilizations still bound to physical form." Nora looked back at the galactic core. "Do you think we're ready?" "I think readiness is not the point," Telzak replied. "Opportunity rarely waits for readiness. It simply arrives." Nora laughed softly. "That's surprisingly human. Perhaps humans have influenced Zenturi philosophy more than expected," Telzak said, scales glowing faint gold. The weeks that followed were filled with preparation. Nora designed the next communication sequence, building upon the harmonic patterns from the initial exchange. This message aimed to ask, not demand, not assume, three essential questions. First, were the precursors consciously aware of the galaxy's younger civilizations? Second, had transcendence changed their perception of existence in ways communicable through harmonic language? And third, did they intend contact to lead toward guidance, partnership, or simply understanding? Constructing these questions required extraordinary care. Each symbol had to be placed with relational intention. Each harmonic layer needed to align with conceptual resonance. Each dimensional anchor had to form a bridge between cognition and possibility. Nora worked with researchers for hours each day, refining the sequences. Even as exhaustion tugged at her, she felt a strange peace. The work filled her with purpose, as though she were walking a path laid down long before her birth. One night, while fine-tuning the experiential harmonics, Ketsti approached with an unusual calm. "You have changed the way the Navari view communication," she said. "Our species long believed logic must remain separate from emotion. But your work shows that separation was an illusion." Nora smiled. "The precursors helped me see that." Ketsti clicked her mandibles softly. "It was not only them. You taught us that meaning emerges from integration. You helped us recognize the limits of our assumptions. That means a lot coming from you, Nora said. It should, Ketzti replied. For many years I underestimated your species. I see now that intuition is not a weakness, but a form of perception. It allows you to bridge gaps no algorithm can cross. Nora felt warmth spread through her chest. Thank you. Velm joined them moments later, floating through the chamber with his faintly glowing skin. The dimensional anchors have stabilized. We can begin calibration whenever you are ready. Good, Nora said. Tomorrow we'll run the full sequence. The next day, the resonance chamber hummed with anticipation. Unlike the dramatic atmosphere of the first contact, this session was more intimate, restricted to essential personnel and council observers. The galaxy watched through encrypted channels, trusting the process to those best equipped to understand it. Nora stood at the central platform. Telzak, Ketzti, Zaf, Velm, and dozens of researchers prepared their stations. The lattice hovered in the center, dormant but waiting. When everyone signaled readiness, Nora initiated the sequence. The harmonic message unfolded with a delicate beauty, subtle, respectful, layered with meaning. It extended concepts of inquiry and connection, wove emotional resonance through relational structure, and invited shared understanding. When the message completed, the chamber filled with silence once more. Then the response came. This time it arrived faster, almost immediate. The lattice ignited with dimensional harmonics, more vibrant than before. Patterns spiraled outward in waves, each one expanding into structures that seemed to stretch beyond physical comprehension. Nora felt a pressure in her mind, not invasive, but like standing at the edge of a great ocean and feeling its tide pull close. They are amplifying the sequence, Zaf said, voice trembling. No, Nora whispered. They are answering our questions. The patterns unfolded with purposeful clarity. The first response suggested awareness, vast, timeless awareness. The precursors recognized the existence of younger civilizations. They understood the passage of time, though they no longer experienced it linearly. They perceived the galaxy not as a scattering of isolated worlds, but as a single unfolding tapestry. The second response addressed their state of being. Hints of their perspective rippled through the harmonics, suggesting they existed in a form of consciousness unrestricted by physical limits. They did not experience separation between thought and energy, self and environment, past and future. They existed in a unity beyond dimensional boundaries, and their communication reflected that unity. The third response was the most profound. It extended a pattern unlike any they had seen, a pattern that conveyed neither instruction nor command but invitation. Not to transcend, not to follow blindly, but to understand, to grow, to perceive the universe with greater coherence, to integrate thought, emotion, and meaning as the precursors once had. Ketzti clicked her mandibles softly. They're offering knowledge. No, Nora said, tears forming. They're offering perspective. The pattern pulsed gently, like a hand extended across infinity. Then, slowly it began to recede. As it faded, a final resonance echoed through the chamber, a soft harmonic whisper, subtle yet unmistakable. Nora felt the meaning ripple through her. They are telling us, she said quietly, that we are not alone in our search for understanding. The lattice dimmed into stillness. The chamber remained silent for long moments. Then Telzak spoke. This changes everything. Yes, Nora said, but it also confirms everything the precursors believed. Morvac, who had been watching from the council tier, addressed her with solemn reverence. Dr. Ellis, what comes next? Nora looked at the quiet lattice, thinking of the path the precursors had walked, the path now opening before the younger species of the galaxy. She breathed deeply. We continue the conversation, she said. Telzak's scales glimmered gold. And after that, Nora smiled gently, feeling the vastness of the future unfold around her. We learn to see with new eyes. Together, the stars of the galactic core shimmered beyond the window, pulsing with ancient light. In their silent rhythms, Nora sensed the echoes of civilization that had transcended millions of years earlier, waiting not for worship or imitation, but for understanding. And the galaxy, at long last, was ready to listen,